Hamas says it has a deal. Will Israel accept it? A ceasefire and partial hostage handover are on the table. Israeli protesters want the government to take it and bring the hostages home. But the leadership seems set on its maximalist Gaza offensive. Is this a breakthrough or another diplomatic breakdown? It's up for debate on CounterPoints with me, Melinda Nusafora. A ceasefire or long-term peace? A staged release of hostages or the full return of every captive? Both Israel and Hamas have, at times, changed their approach during negotiations to end the Gaza war. This latest potential breakthrough sees Hamas revive a plan it rejected in July. It now says it will agree to the US-backed proposal. But since then, Israel has toughened its demands. It's no longer interested in partial deals and is preparing for the full takeover of Gaza City.
Without Hamas's defeat, are not only hardening Hamas's position and delaying the release of our hostages, they are also ensuring that the horrors of October 7 will repeat themselves over and over again, and that our sons and daughters will have to fight over and over again in an endless war.
Those people the Prime Minister is referring to are these hundreds of thousands of protesters. On Sunday, they staged the largest demonstration since the war began 22 months ago. Demands for the government to make a deal are growing louder and louder. Coming up on CounterPoints, we'll ask, are we on the brink of a breakthrough? Are the recent protests a sign of deepening public anger? And are we any closer to a day after plan for Gaza? Joining us to debate the latest ceasefire talks is Dr. Jamal Nazzal, Fatah spokesperson and member of the Palestinian National Council. And also here on CounterPoints, Dr. Shuki Friedman, Vice President of the Jewish People Policy Institute and former head of the Foreign Law Department for the Israeli Prime Minister's Office. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me here on CounterPoints. Israel is weighing up Hamas's latest position on a Gaza ceasefire deal. According to mediators, this is effectively the same deal that the group rejected in July. Prime Minister Netanyahu says Hamas's revised position is a clear sign the group is under intense pressure. Shuki, let me start with you. Should Prime Minister Netanyahu take this deal?
It's a very difficult question because on one hand, the Israeli terms and the cabinet decision for ending the war and having a deal with Hamas is a complete and allowing the Hamas militia and full capability of Israel to control the borders, and which is the most important thing, actually taking Hamas off power in Gaza and putting there another power, maybe international or Arabic power that will take over Gaza and rule Gaza instead of Hamas. For now, it seems that Hamas is rejecting these terms, and then Netanyahu have a very difficult dilemma. On one hand, the possibility of releasing half of the live hostages and some bodies that Hamas take over, and also going to a ceasefire that will give Hamas the ability to gain power and to actually strengthen itself toward another round of violence against Israel.
But this is a deal that Israel agreed to in July. Why would it not agree to it again now?
As time passes, Israel realizing that Hamas is under pressure and the threat to take over Gaza and to invade Gaza and to actually take over the entire Gaza Strip under Israeli control is serious threat toward Hamas. And also there is always a risk that we lose the rest of the hostages if we now agree to a partial deal that will bring home only part of them.
Jamal, what do you make of that? Is this a tough decision for Israel to make, or if it is interested in getting the hostages back and getting peace, shouldn't this be an easy call?
Can we comment on the last sentence your guest has said? He said, we will lose the rest of the hostages if we accept this deal. Now, I am an opponent of Hamas. I disapprove of the October 7th. And you say, if we make a ceasefire, you will lose the rest of the hostages. Whereas the offer that came from Witkoff would stipulate that a certain number of hostages would be released for a ceasefire of 60 days, and then there would be new negotiations on releasing new hostages for ending the war. This is what you do not want, because you want for the war to go on practically for a very long time, because the objective of Israel, as you said, is the occupation of Gaza, not freeing the hostages. That is really obvious. International Court of Justice has accused Israel of committing genocide. The international community knows this very well. The intention of Israel is to exterminate the entire Palestinian people, to displace them, and probably to get them out of Gaza at all. So we have two sides here. One side desires the end of the war. The other one is practicing warmongering, trying to destroy an entire people. The Palestinian people wants to end the war. We as Fatah wants to see an end to this one-sided war. There is no war. There is an Israeli aggression on a civilian population, and there is no Hamas. When Israel said they would invade Rafah, they said they would only destroy the last remaining 2 divisions of Hamas. Well, they came in, found no Hamas, and destroyed Rafah nonetheless. This is what they want to do with Gaza now, because they want to flatten the whole place. They said it on the first day. So the genocidal intention is there. It is well documented. It's on live stream. And there's it doesn't make sense to even ask the question, do you want to end the war or not? They don't want to end the war. That's the truth.
Dr. Friedman, respond to that. What do you make of those comments?
First of all, let's be precise. The ICJ never accused Israel of genocide, just under investigation. The important thing is that Israel is willing to end the war tomorrow. It's just really very simple from the first day. If
the ICJ did not accuse Israel of genocide, why is Mr. Netanyahu and Gallant wanted?
Stop the war. We simply want to prevent another October 7. The Palestinians saying again and again, and by the way, do you imagine that 80% of the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza think that the October 7 invasion and truces against Israelis and rape and killing of babies was legitimate? Do you know that majority of Palestinians would recommend
That's distortion of facts
again and again? So Israelis want to live in a safe border, prevent another October 7, prevent rape of women, killing of babies, and taking...
How many babies has your government killed? Do you know that 17,000 Palestinian children were sniped by your government? And you're talking about beheading babies. This has been debunked time and again.
Okay, let me ask this question then, Dr. Friedman. If I can put this to you.
Hamas power in Gaza and put another more responsible Arab forces to take over, to rule Hamas and to rule Gaza, and to enable Gazans and Palestinians live and prosper. Because if you look back in history on 2005, 20 years ago exactly, 20 years ago from now, we retreated from Gaza, enabled the Palestinians to prosper, to rebuild their state, to rebuild their sovereignty in Gaza. After a year, Hamas threw from roofs of Gaza buildings, Fatah people, and since them building his power and tunnels, so we'll be able to invade Israel and to kill thousands of Israelis. We want peace We retreated from Gaza. We're not willing to rule on Gaza and control it. We want to secure our borders from another October 7. And this is our obligation as Israelis to verify that Hamas is completely demolished and expired from the region, and it's the favor of the Palestinians themselves, because my friend, I would imagine, would not like Hamas to take over not Gaza and not the West Bank. And if Israeli...
All right, let me put that to Jamal for a response. Go ahead, Jamal.
Paying money to Hamas. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want your response to that. And particularly this assertion that Israel left Gaza to ensure that the Palestinian people could prosper and rebuild. Is that what happened? And was that the precursor to what we saw on October 7?
I was there in 2005 when Sharon decided to one-sidedly withdraw from Gaza. He refused to coordinate this with the Palestinian Authority. So practically he handed Gaza down to Hamas. He handed Gaza over to Hamas.
No, he handed it to the Palestinian Authority. Arafat landed in Gaza.
It was not coordinated.
After Oslo Agreement.
One-sided. Excuse me, it was a one-sided withdrawal by the Israeli government. And Gaza remained under blockade ever since. Israel maintained control over the airspace, the border, the entry of fuel, water, food, and everything. So if Gaza was free, why are we seeing now 500 trucks outside of Gaza waiting to come in? No, Israel allowed Hamas to take over. Sharon helped Hamas to take over. And that at the time when the PA was placed under a military blockade, military sanctions, we were not allowed to buy arms to enforce the law. So that is the atmosphere where Hamas took over by the help of Israel. And if you are now an opponent to Hamas, were you saying this to your government when Mr. Netanyahu dispatched the head of the Mossad to Qatar, asking them to pay money to Hamas? Of course, your government has endorsed Hamas. It has protected it. It has made agreements with it. It has paid money to Hamas. And now all your problem is Hamas. And you are so kind saying that you want some Arab forces to rule the Palestinian. You are a professor of law, and you should respect the right of self-determination to the Palestinian people. We can govern ourselves. We are a people of 15 million individuals.
We're going to come to the day after later on in our show. We're going to come to what happens with the Palestinian people as our show progresses. So we will come to that. But let me, before we move on to our next segment, Dr. Friedman, respond to those allegations that Jamal has made. But I also want to ask you a very direct question because it's come from the mediators. The mediators of this have said that the ball is now in Israel's court. It could effectively pause the suffering now if it wanted to, couldn't it?
First of all, it's not true, because unless Hamas would agree to unarmed and to actually give up Gaza, the Palestinians will suffer and Israel will suffer. Furthermore, my friend is talking from Ramallah, I assume. The Palestinian Authority hardly controls the West Bank. I wish they would, but they don't. I don't think they're capable of taking over Gaza. So we, as
because of the Israeli attacks,
the international community would like Gaza to prosper, to rebuild, and to actually be an example. So the way Palestinians can control themselves, not choosing the way of terror, but choosing the way of sovereignty, responsibility, prosperity, and investing their resources, not in digging tunnels toward Israel and to attack Israel, not by...
What resources? Do you mean the millions of tax revenues that your government is withholding from our government? Is that our resources?
Weapons and ammunition, but resources in building water plants, in building power plants, in building factories, in building hospitals, and serve their population to the sake of the population.
How many hospitals did your government destroy in Gaza?
Okay, I have a question before we move on for you, Jamal. I want to know, this is effectively the same deal that Hamas rejected back in July. So this could all be a moot point that we're discussing now, because this could have been over if Hamas had have accepted the deal in July. Is there not a part to blame for there being a lack of unified pressure from the Palestinian community, the Palestinian Authority, from other members of this Palestinian cause that weren't able to ensure that this deal went through in July when it could have?
Is this question to me?
Yes.
We have no leverage over Hamas. We have no coordination with Hamas. Hamas didn't consult with us when they committed that horrible mistake of kidnapping civilians from in Israel. Of course, we do not condone this. And if they had listened to us, we would have built a government of national unity. We would have chosen the path of rebuilding instead of making alignments with Iran, something that we never aspired to do as a Fatah
If you don't have leverage on Hamas, how do you want to control Gaza? How could we be?
Hamas controls Gaza because you enabled them from doing this. Your government gave them money to do this. Your money are their partners. Hamas and Netanyahu are partners. They have had a coalition throughout the 90s when Hamas was doing the suicide bombings to topple the Israeli right governments, because Hamas's worst scenario was seeing a Palestinian state created. This is the same objective of Mr. Netanyahu, who dedicated his entire life to destroy the peace process, the Oslo. This was the common denominator of Hamas and Netanyahu. They worked together. And all of a sudden, they allowed the 7th of October to happen. Do you believe your government did not know about the 7th October 7th? Why then they would not allow for an independent commission to investigate what happened? Nobody knows what happened. Your government knows what happens, but the Israeli public doesn't know. The Israeli institutions wouldn't.
We're going to need to move on in a moment, but Shuki, I'm going to give you a right of reply before we move on to our next section.
You know, we're looking for the future, and I'm looking for the future of two people, Israel and the Palestinians, and the way we might prosper side by side. And I think as far as Hamas is controlling Gaza, no one will be able to control it. And therefore, the first condition of enabling Palestinians to prosper is to take Hamas off power in Gaza. I think it's in interest of the Palestinian Authority. It's the interest of Israel, it's the interest of the rest of the region in Egypt. So everybody agree that this is the target. Now, the question is how to get there. I don't think, unfortunately, that the Palestinian Authority is able to do something about it. As my friend said, they don't have any leverage on Hamas. So someone have to do it, hopefully by a Hamas agreement to just give up. I hope they will, and will give Israel the rest of the hostages, and actually give up its power and weapon, and then we'll be able to go forward for a better future.
Okay. Well, from the last time that we spoke to a Hamas representative here on CounterPoints, they seemed adamant that they were not interested in disarming. So it will be interesting to see how those negotiations progress. But look, let's move on to a more domestic focus now. Prime Minister Netanyahu is facing two strongly opposed domestic positions right now. Firstly, there's pressure from the far-right members of his government who reject any truce with Hamas. And then there's growing public anger at the government's handling of the crisis. An estimated 400,000 protesters took to the streets on Sunday, the largest rally since the war began. So, Shuki, how much trouble is the Prime Minister in? Are these protests a sign of deepening public opposition to the government?
That's why they need to continue the war, to silence them.
All right. I'll come to you next, Jamal. Let's let Dr. Friedman answer.
First of all, I just demonstrate I don't speak for the Prime Minister in any way. I just give a interpretation of the situation. I would say that you're right, Netanyahu is in a real dilemma, in a T-junction where he has to decide whether to continue and keep his government by actually agreeing to the demands of the far-right wing members of the government, or to listen to the Israeli street and the majority of Israelis that want a truce with Hamas for now, not agreeing to leave Hamas in power, but actually agree to some truce that will enable us to get more hostages and more bodies from Hamas for now. And Netanyahu is actually, along the few recent days, again and again declared that indirectly or indirectly that he will continue the war and continue to.
But do you think that there is growing public opposition? Is there a feeling, is there a sentiment that people are unhappy?
No question that the majority of Israelis, based on polls that we have done within the Jewish People Policy Institute and others, and as you mentioned, by demonstrations in streets, that the Israeli public demanding the government to seriously consider a truce or a media agreement with Hamas for now. And Netanyahu is in a political dilemma because he might lose his government if he goes this direction.
Okay. Jamal, what do you think? Is this a distraction?
I think without the war, Netanyahu would lose his government, and he will have to go to elections that he will probably lose. That is why he thinks the only way to politically survive is for the war to go on. And for the war to go on means for the genocide to go on. What is happening now is a genocide. This is not a debate for scholars of international law. Everyone knows this. Continuing the war means continuing with the famine. And the famine is not a threat only to the present situation, because every single individual in Gaza is now food insecure. 500,000 people are in catastrophic hunger. That is IPC phase 5, and famine is not only a mass death. It reshapes the population for generations to come. During the Irish famine, for example, nearly 2 million Irish people died. 150 years later, survivor descendants still show higher rates of metabolic disorder. A person's food response has been altered indefinitely because of food scarcity that occurred 150 years ago. That means 150 years from now, we will have Palestinians who suffer from the consequences of famine, because there is a biological legacy attached to starvation. 2 million Palestinians face this fate today. And you support the continuation of the war. That means you support the continuation of death and genocide.
Shuki, do you think that the Prime Minister is happy to let the war continue as a distraction maybe from his domestic issues?
I must admit, it's surprising me that the spokesperson for Fatah is repeating Hamas lies regarding starvation.
Which lies? Hunger is documented.
Currently, hundreds or thousands of trucks with.
Well, you deny the very existence of the Palestinian people. How do you not deny the existence of famine? The lie of starvation is definitely really. Excuse me, for you, the existence of the Palestinian people is the reality.
No, let's go. It's no genocide. If Israel wanted to genocide the Palestinians, it was easy to do it. We don't have any interest in killing any Palestinians.
What if killing 60,000 civilians were not a genocide? Is it okay then?
Therefore, the question is now. You
don't answer my questions.
More politically, I will address the questions. But first of all, it's now the question politically is whether Netanyahu will decide to side by his government and choose the ability of surviving or take this risk. But I think what is really important is that the majority of the population in the Palestinian side will demand that Hamas will give back the hostages.
But do you think the majority, though, of the Israeli side also want the government to make a deal?
And all the starvation claims, it will enable the Palestinian to really get out of the catastrophe in Gaza now and rebuild their buildings and houses and infrastructures, because it's the interest of the Palestinians, it's the interest of the Israelis, and it's all in the hands of the Palestinians. Just simple.
But if I can return to the question at hand, do you think that the Prime Minister is keen to continue this war to distract from domestic issues?
I think
he very much is.
Prime Minister is in a serious dilemma, strategic dilemma, because giving up Hamas means that the risk to another October 7 is serious. So the prime minister has to find the path to take off Hamas from power and unarm Hamas from its weapons in Gaza Strip. This is the strategic target of Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I don't know which path he will choose. I'm not sure that the only consideration is political.
Jamal, has the lack of a unified Palestinian voice played directly into Prime Minister Netanyahu's hands here? It's allowed him to create this distraction.
I guess so. This is the policy of divide and rule, which the Israelis learned from the British colonialism. There's no secret about that, and you don't have to be smart to do this. You only need to have the power and the means to do it. And Israel did have the power to place a military sanctions blockade on the Palestinian Authority back in the late 90s, and this allowed Hamas to arm through the tunnels that Israel overlooked, and that enabled them from taking power in Gaza. So the division, what they call Palestinian division, is a product of the Israeli policy. However, there is an unbridgeable rift between us and Hamas when it comes to the ideologies and objectives. As a Fatah, we are after creating an independent Palestinian state on the borders of 1967 with East Jerusalem as its capital. When it comes to Hamas's objective, I've been studying Hamas for 35 years. I don't know what they want. This is part of the Islamic Brotherhood. Israel enabled them in the late 70s.
Very clear. They want to take over Israel, demolish Israel, and take all Israel and the Jews out of the Palestinian territory.
So why did you give them money then? Why did you ask Qatar to give them $35 million a month? Your government did that because you wanted to widen the division.
Let Shuki respond to that allegation there. Jamal, go ahead, Dr. Friedman.
I mean, there's no allegation. It's simply the question of how the Palestinian will be able to prosper, because the Fatah and the Palestinian Authority are not capable of taking over Gaza today. So what their solution to the situation is, if tomorrow we will enable Palestinian Authority to get to Gaza, do you think they will be able to control the population there, rule Gaza? Of course not, unfortunately, for them and for us. And therefore, the only solution is to, this way or another...
If Israel stops intervening, Gaza, we can do this. We can do this.
Israel retreated from Gaza, and we see all what happened. So,
but placed it under a blockade.
We have to look to the future and find the path of, first of all, for the sake of the Palestinian and Israeli, unarmed Hamas. Take it off.
I have one last domestic question.
On the way to prosper together.
We've heard a survey from Agam Labs at the Hebrew University that surveyed serving members of the military and asked them to describe their feelings about the proposed Gaza campaign. The biggest group, 47% of responders, expressed negative emotions towards the government and its handling of the hostage negotiations and that broader campaign. Shuki, do you think that Netanyahu's government is at risk?
I think it's risk both ways. First of all, if Netanyahu decides to go to truce, to risking his government, but on the other path as well. And definitely Netanyahu have to listen to the Israeli public, because if you want to go to war, you have to get a legitimacy from a wide portion of the people, which is not the situation right now. So I think, and again, this is what is important, Israel still have to put an eye on the strategic purpose of the war, which means taking Hamas off power in Gaza and unarming Hamas. But the path we should take might be a truce now if a reasonable condition will be achieved.
And what do you think, Jamal? Is this a government that is in danger? Is Netanyahu playing for power here? Does he want peace? Does he want to take Gaza City?
No, he doesn't. Well, you asked me earlier about the Palestinian divisions. in Israel itself, there are far more severe divisions in the Israeli society than the Palestinians ever had, because the Israeli society is a composition of ethnic groups that have nothing to do with each other. They cannot coexist with each other. And Israel, prior to October 7th, Israel was falling apart. The army was striking. The pilots were striking. Israel was heading to a terrible civil war. The October 7th rescued Israel from that fate. So there is a consensus in Israel that for the unity in Israel to be preserved, they need to continue with the war forever. I'm saying forever. On the Palestinian side, and that's a classic difference between us and the Israelis, peace and prosperity would unify Palestinians, whereas Israelis cannot be unified unless the war continue forever. I must tell you this thing. If Israel had gained victory in 1948, why is there war in 2025? If war is the way, why is Israel not living in peace? I was asking myself this question when the Iranian missiles were hailing down on Israel. I asked myself, why does Israel do this to itself? It has every chance to prosperity and peace. The Arab initiative launched by Saudi Arabia, adopted by the Arab Summit in 2002, was rejected by Sharon. The Arab states, headed by Saudi Arabia, offered Israel full-fledged peace in exchange for the territories occupied in 1967. You convince yourself. The Israeli public were bamboozled by their leadership that the Arabs want to destroy them. Nobody wants to destroy you. You want to destroy yourself by warmongering. Make peace with the Palestinians.
Only
Okay, let's let Dr. Friedman respond to that. Shuki, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I wish was the situation. On October 7, Hamas invaded to Israel. They have planned to take over the rest of Israel. They have planned they already nominated people to be the mayor of Rehovot and Tel Aviv and so forth. In the middle of Tehran, there's a clock counting down to the end of Israel. They're developing missiles and a weapon of mass destruction in a declared purpose to demolish Israel. Hamas believes and ideology is to demolish Israel. So I wish that was the situation, and I wish Hamas would not invade Israel, killing almost 2,000 Israelis, raping women, killing babies on October 7. I wish, but the situation is that...
What do you think about killing 17,000 Palestinians?
Ourselves, not for the sake of war, but the sake of living here. And we want to live here side by side.
Do you have information that 17,000 Palestinian children were killed by prosper Palestinian
I doubt
this.
People, because Palestinian here, so I'm sure about it, and the majority of Israelis declare it. And I think, unlike the majority of Palestinians that want to October 7 to happen again and again, the majority of Israelis would like a peaceful life side by side with the Palestinian people, with the Palestinian authority. And if I look to the future, I hope one day we will get there.
Okay, well, we have been talking a little bit about the future, and I said we'd come back to it. So let's wrap up our show with that topic. In order for any peace agreement to be lasting and just, a stable future for each party must be assured. And yet, the future of the Palestinians remains very much uncertain. Israel says it wants to take control of Gaza City, but it doesn't want to govern it. Netanyahu's government has approved a symbolic motion to annex the West Bank, and President Trump isn't backing away from his plan to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. So we'll go to you first then this time, Jamal. What does a day after the war in Gaza look like? Is Hamas there? Is Fatah there? Who's in control? Are they going to recognise an Israeli state? What does it look like?
Well, we start from what you said. You said Israel wants to take over Gaza, but it doesn't want to govern it. Well, let's do the math. What does it mean when Israel takes over Gaza and is not willing to govern it? That means, where will the Palestinian people be? The majority of them may have died by the end of the war. they will perish either by famine or or getting sniped or whatever. So the big question is, where will the Palestinian people be if the war continues? And I am afraid that Israel wants for the war to continue until the last Palestinian in Gaza is killed. This is the most dangerous thing that has ever taken place on earth. So the major step would be for Israel now to stop the war, to free the hostages. We want the hostages to go home, and we want our 17,000 prisoners also to go home. 17,000 prisoners and 17,000 Palestinian children killed. What does the day after look like? Israel has to withdraw, and the Palestinian Authority can govern Gaza. The Palestinian Authority was built from nothing.
Would you be able to go to Gaza
We do have a state. We have the institutions of the state, but the Israeli army keeps on destroying everything that we rebuild, because Israel simply, the Israeli governments never wanted peace. Peace has to be imposed on Israel by the major powers that have created Israel. And yes, Israel will have to listen and see in New York in September, world states recognizing Palestine one after the other, and it will be seated in its place and having to listen to what has to be, namely the recognition of the Palestinian state that will come sooner or later. A Palestinian state will be created on the side of Israel, not instead of Israel. Nobody is talking about removing Israel. Israel has to be the neighbor of the Palestinian state, in spite of the fact that every Israeli is convinced that Hamas or Iran wants to destroy them. Hamas isn't in a position to destroy anyone except itself.
Okay, all right. And Shuki, you've been saying there needs to come a time when both sides are going to live peacefully side by side. For Israel, what does the day after the war look like?
We're mentioning today 30 years, exactly 30 years, the secret signing of the Oslo Agreement in Oslo. It happened exactly 30 years from now. Unfortunately for the Palestinians, they had the opportunity to establish a state, but they failed to do it. And Arafat broke out in, first of all, Hamas, and then Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian leader, broke out in violence against Israel in 2000. And
when Sharon invaded Al-Aqsa Mosque, killing 1,000
We'll just let Dr. Friedman finish his response, and then I'll come back to you, Jamal.
So the Palestinians said never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. I hope the ceasefire, this crisis, will be taken by the Palestinians, and they will responsibly take over the Gaza Strip after Hamas would remove from power. For now, I would not recommend my friend to go to Gaza because he'll be assassinated by Hamas, but maybe one day it will be possible, and then we will have to slowly rebuild the trust between the people.
Well, I need to go to Jerusalem to do my prayers. I wouldn't be allowed by your government. They probably would arrest me.
What about international recognition of the Palestinian state? Shuki, has that made any difference? Do you think when international communities come out, other countries come out and recognize the Palestinian state, does that increase pressure on Israel? Does it make Israel think that a two-state solution is possible, or do you think that it is an unnecessary provocation and distraction at this current juncture?
First of all, we have to remember that approximately 137 states already recognized Palestinian state. The UN General Assembly decided approximately 10 years ago, or a bit less, to recognize Palestinian state. So it's not the first time it happened. So far, it's not in any way brought a Palestinian real state. Palestinian real state, not a declared state, will happen.
We have a real state. You only need to recognize it. Palestine does exist as a state. I'm sorry that you cannot go to Ramallah because you don't want to.
No, actually, I've been there. Nice place.
So if you've been there, you have seen the institutions of the state.
Yeah, unfortunately, these institutions failed to rule the Palestinians. They've been The last time that you had an election in Palestinian Authority was 20 years ago. So basically, the Palestinian Authority doesn't
What about
function.
the $2 billion that your government
I think that's a good point with regards to elections. I mean, if we're talking about what the future looks like, when are we going to have elections?
We will have elections once the Israeli occupation ceases to be that violent. 2021, we were so close to holding our elections. Then Israel decided to bar elections in Jerusalem. So we had to choose between elections without Jerusalem or elections in Jerusalem. Israel didn't allow us to have elections in Jerusalem. If we accept elections without Jerusalem, that's like recognizing Jerusalem as an Israeli capital, which we do not do. However, a decree has been signed by the president to hold elections for the Palestinian National Council. This will happen soon. We are forming a new constitution. All Israel needs to do is leave us in peace, and we can manage our affairs. We are a people of 15 million people, totally talented. Unlike Israel, we are less dependent on the international community. Can Israel survive without American money? We can. We have shown that we can survive without international money. Your government, your people, can they survive as a colonial power without the complete financing and protection by the United States? That's a classic difference between us.
Okay, let's let Shuki respond to that.
The majority of the budget, the Palestinian budget is very small, ridiculous number, $4 billion or something, and the majority of it coming from donations and taxes.
It's not true.
Paid by Israelis, with no financing from sources, outside sources, foreign sources, and Israeli sources. The Palestinian Authority collapsed in 2, 3, 4 weeks. Israel, on the other hand, is economic.
That's misinformation against the facts. Your government withholds the tax revenues of the Palestinian government.
To find
That's a fact. Why do you deny this?
We just have to Google it, we see it. Anyway, but the important thing is that I think that Palestinians have to take seriously governing. And so far, they never managed to build.
We don't need lectures from yourself. You need to stop killing people.
We'll be happy
That's your first homework.
Be able to do it. Then we'll be able to, the Palestinians be able to do it. And I hope that, again, one day in the near future, the Palestinian people and the Israeli people will have enough confidence in each other, not depend on foreign declarations, it wouldn't support it, not depend on foreign pressure on each side, it wouldn't support it. We have to build together, we have to build confidence that the Palestinians would not like to kill us and vice versa. And if that day will come, we'll be able to prosper together.
Before we get there, we need a ceasefire deal. These could be very, very formative days, maybe weeks, and let's hope not months ahead. Gentlemen, we're out of time, so we will have to leave it there. But I thank you both for your impassioned contribution to Counterpoints. We like to put both sides of the story to our audience here, and you have certainly brought that for us, and we appreciate your time. Thank you to our guest, Dr. Jamal Nazzal, Fatah spokesperson and member of the Palestinian National Council, and Dr. Shuki Friedman, Vice President of the Jewish People Policy Institute and former head of the Foreign Law Department for the Israeli Prime Minister's Office. Thanks for joining Counterpoints. And our audience, thank you to you for joining us on this episode of Counterpoints. You can watch our latest debates and interviews by subscribing to Al Arabiya English on YouTube, and be sure to follow us on X and TikTok. Thanks for your company.